Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So today we do have a new featured location in the Bifrost. So the Bifrost being a new location that after turn 4, move all cards one location to the right. So this is going to be pretty cool for a few reasons. All of the other move cards and components up to this point moved cards over to the left if it had a pre-designed direction. And so this is the first location that's going to be able to move things back to the right. And so right off the top of my head when I saw this, there are really only two avenues if you are wanting to play into the Bifrost and lean in. The first one being, of course, a move style deck, something that is going to get benefit from having those cards shift over. And then the second is more in line with my style of play, and it is an anti-move deck. So we all know how much I like Kingpin and how much I want to make Kingpin work. This location is Kingpin's paradise. So we did throw a deck together, and pretty much everything in this deck wants to have the opponent's cards move for you to buff up, or you can move them yourself, or have them move so that our cards get destroyed. So this deck has a lot of components of the anti-move style deck that we ran before with Kingpin, but this time he has a cute little pirate variant, and we have Biofreeze that is working in our favor. And so let's run through the cards in this deck really quickly. So the first up, of course, being Kingpin. If you drop Kingpin on turn 3, Biofreeze will trigger after 4, and then every card that gets moved over into Kingpin's lane or where Kingpin was revealed will be destroyed. And so with that, we have a few other move cards to kind of help enable this in case we don't draw into Biofreeze. We have Polaris, which is a 3-cost 5-power card that will move one or 2-cost card to that location. So she offers some pretty good utility in being able to move like a collector or even rocks to cap out locations. A couple of cool small utilizations for Polaris. And then we have Arrow. So Arrow is a pretty cool 5-power card. She offers a lot of utility. On the turn that she's dropped, she will move all enemy cards played that turn to that location. So if we drop a Kingpin and then we drop Arrow in that same lane next turn, any cards that the opponent plays will be moved into the Kingpin lane. We have Magneto. Magneto being more so a really high power card, but he does offer the utility of moving all opposing 3 and 4 cost cards to that location. So if there is enough room on the board, you can drop this. It can move a Devil Dino, a Ghost Rider, a Strong Guy into the Kingpin lane to destroy them, but really he's mainly there to offer either disruption or a high power level output. And so then along with the anti-move style components, we have Kraven. So Kraven is going to benefit anytime an opponent's card moves, anytime our cards move, and so he is going to get some benefit not only from Biofreeze, but also from Polaris, Arrow, or Magneto. If we drop him in a lane and then have cards move towards him, he's going to get buffed up, and typically he's going to get pretty large. Another one of our semi-move components is Juggernaut. Juggernaut we're going to be able to drop, and his on reveal is if your opponent played a card here this turn, move them randomly. We can take a chance of potentially being able to use this to move cards into the Kingpin lane, but more ideally we can use this to make sure that opponents can't drop cards in a key location. So like a Mojo World, if we drop Juggernaut on turn 6, we can make sure that they can't cap it out, and we can push their cards off. So filling in the rest of the deck is just a cheap Death Wave combo. So we have the Hood. The Hood is going to get some potential upside in, we can drop this in the left lane. On turn 3, we can drop Kingpin in the middle location. When the Hood moves over, Kingpin is going to destroy that negative Hood card. Then we have Yondu just to act as a cheap destruction tool to discount death a little further. We have Bucky Barnes. Bucky Barnes is going to have the cool utility of if we drop him and he gets moved into the Kingpin lane and destroyed, then he's going to turn into the Winter Soldier. He's going to offer a lot of cheap utility for a non-standard destruction engine of the Kingpin destruction. And then we have Carnage. So we didn't want to run these cards without any kind of destruction engine just in case, let's say we don't draw into Kingpin, we don't draw into Biofreeze. We need a way to try to destroy some of these negative effects so that we can increase our upside. And then rounding out the deck the rest of the way, we have Wave, which on reveal next turn, cards in both players' hands cost 4, and then Death. So as long as we destroy 2 cards by the end of the game, so a Yondu and a Bucky Barnes, or a Yondu and a Hood, then Death is going to be discounted to a point where we can drop both Death and another card on turn 6 if we played Wave on the prior turn. Okay, and so that is the rundown of the deck. We are going to go ahead and jump into a few games. We piloted this and tested it for about 3 games, and it worked phenomenally. I've been really wanting a chance to show off this cute little Kingpin variant that I unlocked from the season caches, and so this is the perfect opportunity, and I'm really excited because it really seems like it plays to Kingpin's strengths. So let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so first up we have Deadpin, and they have one of the cool ogre-looking variants from the Nexus event, but we are just going to pass on the first turn. They do have Human Torch, so if we can make it where Human Torch gets destroyed, so let's say we draw into our Kingpin, then that will increase our upside by quite a bit. We're gonna go ahead and drop Kraven into this right lane. They're gonna do the same. That way we get upside out of those cards that are gonna get pushed by Bifrost here. And then we do draw into Kingpin. So we're going to go ahead and drop him here unless they have a way to move their Human Torch out away from here. Then after turn 4, both of these cards are going to get destroyed, and it is going to be so very satisfying. And so Kingpin's going to come down next turn unless they can either pull this up or do something else. Then we're going to get some pretty good upside here. And they have initiation, but I think what we're going to do, I think we're going to go ahead and drop the Hood here. We're going to drop Yondu all the way over to the right. We would drop Polaris in here, but Polaris is going to of course get moved over and would end up getting destroyed. So actually no, I think that's probably worth it to buff up our Kraven further. It would move theirs over, it could kill their Kraven, and then they would be left with a wiped out board. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if they have a way to move their, oh, they do. They do have a way to move their Human Torch on this turn, unfortunately. But maybe with our Polaris, we can grab Human Torch here instead of Kraven. Ah, no, okay, we don't get the upside, unfortunately. And so our Hood is gonna move over, our Polaris, their Kraven, their Human Torch, of course, is going to get very, very large here. But our Kingpin is going to go off and just start destroying all of these cards. So their Kraven, our Kraven, all of these cards. And it looks like our Kraven actually didn't get buffed up when the cards moved there. So that's interesting. That's interesting to know. And so then we can use Magneto to move their Doctor Strange around. I think what we do instead, I think we're going to anticipate that their Human Torch is going to get moved. I think we drop a Magneto here. Next turn, we can drop Arrow and Demon somewhere where we think it will help us, will help us extend that lead. And so if they have a Heimdall, that's going to shift it over to the left into Xandar, where they would win that one. And then their Vulture is going to get buffed up as well. So we do move their Vulture over. So if they do run a Heimdall here, if they run a Heimdall shift, then I think we're okay. So if, let's say they use a Heimdall and they put it here to push over here, not great. Or we could make anything they drop this turn go over into this lane. But I think what we do is drop both our Arrow and our Demon into Xandar. So if they do drop a Heimdall, we'll pull their Heimdall over with our Arrow, which will then match these. They will of course win this one, but we'll win the middle and the right locations. And then if they drop something else, as long as it doesn't exceed 12 power, we'll pull it over. We'll keep our lead in the Titan location. So I think this is our best bet to try to either win or try to sneak out one of these other two. And so they do play both of their cards into Xandar here. So that is very unfortunate that we read it wrong. But because we dropped 2 really high power cards, we are going to come up over their power level in Xandar, and we still come up over their power level in Titan. So even though they had a massive 24 power Human Torch that they were able to avoid our Kingpin from, we are still able to sneak out the win ever so slightly. And so the Kingpin Kraven interaction is something I need to look at more, because when a card moves here, this gets +2 power. So technically 3 cards got moved over into this lane. He should have been 6 more power, which would have given us quite a bit of upside. All right, so next up we have Aru. In the first location is the Isle of Silence, and so ongoing abilities aren't going to trigger here. We do draw into our Kingpin, So I think we drop the Hood and then Bucky Barnes in the left lane. On turn 3, we drop Kingpin in the middle location. That will push Kingpin off to the right, as long as we draw into Bifrost here, which we didn't. And so we'll have to kind of see. We'll have to play it by ear. But we're going to play our Demon in the far right lane. That way, if Bifrost does flip, it's not going to be necessarily an issue or a game changer, because Demon will stay there and will keep power in that right lane. But otherwise, we really need Bifrost or Carnage. Carnage would give us the upside in the Isle of Silence as well. And so it's Muir Island, so we don't draw into it this turn, which is okay. So how do we want to play it? We could do Kingpin, then we can draw in one card with Polaris. I think we wait one turn. I think we just pass. And so they use a Jubilee, which pulls in a Spectrum, which is not what you want from your Jubilee, because Spectrum has the Honorville ability, give your ongoing cards +2 power. So that is a one and done type effect. And so I think we're going to use our Carnage here. We will go ahead and, do we drop our Kingpin here? I think we drop our Kingpin into the Superflow. No. And then I think we drop our Kingpin in the Isle of Silence as well. That's going to allow us to either use Magneto or Polaris to pull cards over. We'll get some flexibility in. We almost used our Kingpin in the Superflow. Like we were very, very close to using it there. Oh man, how unfortunate. And so we are going to go ahead and I think use our Magneto here. If it pulls one over, as long as it pulls at least one over and kills it, we'll get the upside from being able to destroy their Jubilee, and then we can drop our Death into Muir Island. This becomes tough because they lock down the Superflow, which I wasn't anticipating. Had we dropped our Kingpin there, it would have been great. I didn't have a good read on a Professor X play there. So they do drop 2 cards into the Isle of Silence, and they drop Electro, so they're only able to play 1 card per turn moving forward. So we're going to pull their Jubilee out. We're going to have a pretty sizable lead in the Isle of Silence. We have a lead in Muir Island already. As long as we can keep our lead in both of these lanes, we're okay. And I think with Death here, we're going to have a really good shot at that. Maybe it's a Killmonger, which would destroy this, or maybe it's a Shang-Chi in Muir Island, which would target both of these cards, which would be a sneaky way to win, but it could happen. So let's go ahead and lock this in to see what they're playing. I think there's too many potential play lines, and this is a non-meta deck. I'm not really sure what to anticipate here. So it's really hard to get a read on exactly what they're going to play. There's so many possibilities of how they could win, but most likely they don't have those specific tools that they need. Okay, so they do end up retreating here. And so the Professor X actually almost came in, and it made it a little bit difficult for us. Had we not been able to destroy their Jubilee, or had they dropped some really big power here or even here last turn, it would have been really difficult for us to lock this down and win. But luckily, they kind of slowed down their tempo with the Electro Sunspot play on turn 5, which allowed us to push a lot of power and get ahead in the other 2 lanes. All right, so next up we have Showman, and we have Yondu. We don't have our Kingpin here, but that's okay. We don't need our Kingpin every single time. Ooh, our Yondu gets a pretty good target in their Iron Man. And so then the middle location is Isle of Silence. I think since we don't have our Kingpin here, I think we go ahead and drop Kraven into the middle location. We may drop Polaris into the Bifrost next turn to try and pull whatever 1 or 2 cost card they played out, but it doesn't look like they did. So instead, we're going to go ahead and play our Polaris to keep our lead in these locations. The TVA turning up is pretty good for us. So they just drop a Nakia. We know that our cards are going to shift 1 to the right after this turn, but we don't have a good way to lock a card into the Bifrost here. So we're going to go ahead and just play our Kingpin. It's not going to destroy any cards that are moved from the Bifrost because of the way that Kingpin's own reveal ability reads. It says next turn destroy cards that are moved here. So technically it's after turn 4, but it's not during turn 5, so it's not during the next turn, which is why you need to drop him on 3 and not 4 to make that ability work. But I do think that will be enough to keep a lead in 2 of the 3 locations. So they drop a Mystique and a Sunspot, but of course their Sunspot is going to get moved over to the right. And so then we keep the win with Isle of Silence and Yondu. Our Kraven, of course, gets buffed up. Just a pretty straightforward win. Okay, and so next up, the first location is Bifrost again. We don't have Juggernaut, but we do have Yondu. And so we destroyed their Doc Ock, which would have been pretty bad for us in most scenarios, because we want those sneaky, like on reveal style abilities, and having those all stacked is going to be pretty. It's going to be pretty bad. Kraven is actually going to get quite a bit of upside in this game. We are going to drop Kraven into Strange Academy. When Bifrost triggers, any cards that are moved over into this lane will buff him up. But then additionally, at the end of turn 5, any cards that are here are going to move out. And so if we can stack that in a way that all of the cards that are here move into the same location by capping out one of the others, we're going to get even more upside from him. And so the last location is Limbo. And so I think what we do here, Okoye being a 2-cost card, is going to be a perfect target for our Polaris. We're going to be able to pull Okoye over. Both Yondu and Polaris are going to get moved over into Strange Academy after turn 4. And we're going to really start buffing up our Kraven. Our Kraven is going to be pretty large. And they do drop another card here. Oh, wow. So they drop a Nakia. So they do have their hand and their deck buffed quite a bit. But this is going to be a very large Kraven, and I'm trying to decide whether I want to drop the Juggernaut into Strange Academy. In case they play cards there, maybe we can try to push them over into Bifrost to get an even greater upside. I think we do. I think we play into it, and they do drop 2 cards into Strange Academy, but we push them over into Limbo. So depending on what they are, I think we'll... And so Kraven... Oh, so Kraven... So since Kraven moved, it only stuck with the cards that moved with him or into the lane that he landed in. But we still do get the potential upside of Strange Academy here. So we're going to go ahead and... Do we use our arrow this turn? Since there is an extra turn, we can use our arrow to move any cards that they play into Strange Academy, giving us some additional chance to... and we go first. So typically, they're probably going to try and buff up their Angela to cap it out, reduce the upside of our Kraven. We can drop arrow. It's going to move these 2 cards over into Strange Academy, which will then shoot into another way, into another direction after they flip. So we can reduce the upside that they get in their Angela here. If we catch this, if we move them over, they will now flip from Strange Academy instead of from Limbo, which is going to be good in making sure that Angela does not get that increased buff chance. And so then Mojo is going to give them some pretty good upside here. In whatever they drop here is going to then increase in power. It's going to increase Mojo's power because both lanes or both sides of that location are going to be capped out. So he's going to become a 10 power card. But if whatever they drop is a 3 or a 4 power card, we can move it out with Magneto next turn. I think for this turn, we just drop our Bucky Barnes and our Carnage. That's going to give us 8 power into Strange Academy, which is, of course, less than Magneto. But I do want to hold Magneto for the chance to potentially pull a card out of Limbo so that we can swing and win that location. And so I'm going to go ahead and lock this down. If they do a 3 or 4 cost card here, that's going to be perfect for us, which would be why we wanted to hold our Magneto. And so they do an Ant-Man, which is unfortunate. That pushes them up over that limit. Unfortunately. So now they have 2 cards in hand. They can bounce their Nightcrawler around if they want to. I don't think they've moved him yet. We could drop Death just as a flat 12 power, but I think we drop Magneto here. If we drop Magneto here, and let's say they played a mid-power card to try and come up over our power level here, we're going to move their Shang-Chi, which will reduce their power here. Or if they drop a card here, then our Magneto would most likely be able to come up over that power level. I think this is how we play it. And they did drop a Shang-Chi, so maybe they're running a Killmonger in here as well, but it wouldn't make sense. And so they did get the really good upside in Limbo, but they had to really fight for it. It wasn't as straightforward as what they would have wanted. Their Angela didn't get as many buffs to make it where they didn't have to invest as many resources. Their Shang-Chi, unfortunately for them, didn't hit a high power target. And so we got pretty lucky here. even without our Kingpin with the Bifrost. Okay, so next up we have Safety Blade. We do draw into Kingpin, we do draw into the Bifrost. Just a perfect top deck. And then we're going to be able to play Kraven here, Kingpin on 3, which Kraven will then move, and so will Kingpin, which I think should be what we need to buff up Kraven here. Before, when we had Kraven over here and we locked him into the right lane, he didn't get the buff because the cards that got moved over here technically got destroyed. So I think we have a decent chance here. We'll also be able to destroy their sunspot here, which is going to give us some pretty good upside. And so I think we go ahead with that play line. And I hope they drop another card. In Bifrost, they don't this turn, which is okay. They're letting their sunspot buff up, which we're going to end up destroying their sunspot anyways. So let's go ahead and drop our Kingpin. And interestingly enough, Mirror Dimension might be interesting. So Mirror Dimension, if it copies the Bifrost, it would move the cards over to the right one, and then it would move them over to the right again. But I think we just go ahead and keep with this middle location, because I don't think we get any increased upside from dropping Kingpin here instead of in the middle location. So they drop into Kia, so they do buff up their hand, and we draw into Nova Roma. So we're going to be able to drop our Hood, which will then get destroyed. We'll be able to drop Wave so that we can drop some big cards next turn. Or we could even drop a Polaris into this left lane, but I think I like the Wave interaction a little bit better here. So let's go ahead and lock that in. They do play 2 cards into Nova Roma, but I think it should be all right. And maybe we should have played Wave into Nova Roma to buff up our Kraven further, because our Kraven is going to get pretty large, but +2 is always nice. It's always welcome. And so then we're going to destroy 4 cards here with our Kingpin. So Kraven's going to get pretty large. Kingpin is just going to go on a destruction spree here. He's going to completely wipe that middle location for all of us. And then we have a pretty large Kraven. He could be +2 power, so we're always going to think what could have been. And with how many cards got destroyed there, we actually have a free death here. So we're going to be able to do both death and one other card. And so I think we split our power here. I think we do Magneto, we do death, and then next turn we have an arrow and a demon that will be able to drop in unison to move cards where we need to and make sure that we get the upside from them. And so they do a Moon Girl, which does buff up their collector quite a bit, or a decent amount, but they're still not ahead in Nova Roma off after that. So I think what we do here is we're going to drop our demon into Nova Roma just in case they get some discard cards or they get something that is going to buff up their collector and their Morbius. I want a chance to be able to still be up and over and win this location. And then afterwards we are going to drop our arrow, but it doesn't really matter where we drop her. And so we're just going to drop her into the far left lane to lock that in. And then they drop 3 cards into the Bifrost, and they had one in Nova Roma in Lady Sif. So maybe they were going to do a Lady Sif Ghost Rider combo, which we interrupted. No, it's just some really low cost discard cards. So they may actually come up over our power level here if we're not careful. Okay, just guys, just barely. If we had lost because of that 2 extra power in Kraven, I would have felt so very bad. So very, very good game, Safety Blade. Very, very close. All right, so with that last win out of the way, we are going to go ahead and end the video here. Between our 5 games here and the 3 games that we tested the deck list before recording, we are 8-0 with this list. Of course, that did take some luck. We drew into Kingpin quite a bit, but the deck list feels really, really solid for Bifrost being the new location, being the featured location. I think this is going to work really well. I'm going to keep using this for the next couple of days while this location is featured. And then afterwards, it wouldn't be as impactful, but maybe you'd still be able to get some utilization out of it, just not nearly as much. But with that being said, I do hope that you guys enjoyed the video. I appreciate you guys coming back time and time again to these videos. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like down below. It helps me know that you are enjoying the content. And then if you want to, if you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, leave a comment down below. I love interacting with you guys and just hearing the different perspectives and ideas that you guys have. And so with that being said, I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.